I think we have something really special, a conversation to share with you about the work these wonderful people are doing in their respective organizations across different sectors. So there's a lot to share. Just two brief items of housekeeping, if you will, beforehand. We're aware that an organization in the largest unit of analysis can be considered something like a society. And in our society, and specifically in our city, we just wanted to presence something that is happening now as we sit here, which is that if you were to walk out of this hotel and turn left and walk down the street 1 or 2 blocks, you would come across a picture like this, which was taken earlier today. Because we have brothers and sisters, our most marginalized brothers and sisters, living on the streets, out in the rain, in the cold. And so I think there's a picture here of this from this morning. And I would just ask us to, for just a few brief seconds here, bring our loving presence and awareness, but even more than that, our intention to serve and help in any way we can, and to do perhaps what Ivy from Parkland, the teacher from Parkland, said, which is to find a way to be upstanding, to upstand as we consider our most vulnerable and marginalized citizens who, in this very moment, are outside of the space that we find ourselves so blessed to be in and privileged to be in. So thank you for that intention. The other thing is there's so much information to share as we dive into the organizations and the roles that you all have. Time is short. We actually have a link that we wanted to share. If you wanted to learn more about the impact some of these good folks are having, some of the measurement and the metrics and the outcomes, you can go to this link here, silly.org/wisdom. And there's a long blog post there that shows everything, including things like return on investment of mindfulness in organizations, the effect on productivity, time savings, all of those details you can find at this link if you just scroll down and go into the blog post. So just wanted to make sure you had the information if you're interested. With that, it is such a privilege and an honor to be here with you all. And I would love for you just to share, each in your way, the journeys you've been on as the folks who lead mindfulness in your organizations. Whether your title is Chief Mindfulness Officer formally, or you have an amazing title such as you do, Jenée, which you can share with us. What is the journey in an organization such that there is a job like yours where there's a full-time person or teams that are dedicated to mindfulness? So please paint us a picture. Jenée is from the San Francisco Department of Public Health. For those of you who don't know, this is the municipal agency that runs all of the jails, homeless shelters, city hospitals, about 9,000 employees. Yes. So tell us about that journey and how this came to be.
Sure, thank you. Welcome to San Francisco. I'm a New Yorker who lives here. As Rich introduced you to what's happening on our streets, San Francisco is in the midst of an amazing, probably the worst housing crisis in the country. And the San Francisco Department of Public Health is tasked with stewarding the health of the city and county's population. And inside of that, we have recognized that the way we function is often trauma-inducing, not only to the communities that we serve, but to the workforce. That we are often bureaucratic, siloed, that people are demoralized, that we are not trustworthy, and that it can be a very mean place to work. And because of that, we have gone on a mission to move from being trauma-inducing to trauma-informed, and ultimately a healing organization. An organization that is trustworthy and has at its core compassion and empathy, and is thoughtful about the way we deliver services, that we ask the really key trauma questions, not as what is wrong with you, but what has happened. What has happened? And when you ask the question, what has happened, it invites compassion, It invites looking at strengths in the face of adversity. So I was an embedded trauma trainer inside of maternal adolescent health, and as I was delivering the trauma training, I noticed that the workforce, although interested in trauma principles, did not seem like they had the strength and the bandwidth to really hold the important work that was ahead of us. And it occurred to me that what we needed to do was to become a mindful organization in order to be a trauma-informed organization. The trauma-informed and healing needed to exist inside of a nest of mindfulness. And in that, I went to the trauma leader and I said, I know of an organization that has curated mindfulness for the workforce. Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. I think we should go to them. And being a tremendous leader that he is, he since left the organization, but he said, I'm in. So we went to Search Inside Yourself, and thus began the journey of me becoming a trained Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute teacher to deliver the program, another colleague also being trained, and then I land the role of the program innovation leader. Mindfulness, trauma, racial equity. It's the because I am the only one. Mindfulness, trauma, and racial equity are knit together because part of what makes our organization trauma-inducing is that we can be a very demoralizing place to work for the employees, and the people who have the worst health outcomes across every data point that we measure are people of color. And it's telling us a story about how we have yet to really, truly, honestly grapple with racial equity. And part of the challenge of grappling with racial equity is that we need people to be strong in their core. We need people to grapple with white fragility, which often derails the conversation. As soon as you want to move the conversation forward, we all need to be able to be resilient, stretched out, and then be able to come back. And mindfulness is the pathway. So that was my journey.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, mindfulness in this way of having it embedded in an organization to affect these kinds of changes, these positive changes, happens across sectors. And so we were very deliberate in wanting to invite other friends, other leaders who are bringing this to organization. So Peter, you're at SAP, a German technology company. Tell us about the journey there.
Thank you. Yeah, well, a German originally based technology company that now is, of course, a global company, world leader in business software. So about 3/4 of our business processes around the world are touching an SAP system in the background, just to get a sense of the magnitude. And how did my journey start? So I'm an industrial engineer, studied in Germany. I'm since 11 years in the Bay Area, and I'm for about 20 years with SAP. And for the most time of my career, I was as a consultant, a program manager, delivery executive, running large-scale programs. And I found mindfulness more than a decade ago. And in the beginning, it was something very private. I was one of the closet meditators, but I could, doing it, but not talking about it, because 10 years ago, the time was not as safe as it has become today. So I'm very grateful that mindfulness is really becoming so popular. Well, and being here in the Silicon Valley and being inspired by companies like Intel or like Genentech, or then, of course, Google, running programs, I felt it would be cool to bring something like this to SAP, and I started a grassroots initiative. And at that point, and I want to address this specifically to people in the audience that feel like I would like to do something similar. But at this point, I did feel really safe about it. It felt like taking a big risk, and I took little risk by little risk, and I became eventually the director of mindfulness. And as of today, so we started this work really in 2012. Today, we have trained more than 8,000 people in more than 50 locations around the world in a 2-day training class. Mainly it's SIY. So people really like it, and even more exciting, we have a wait list of about 8,000 people. So we have a bit of a positive demand problem. And to tackle this, we have created an own team of teachers internally. We have so the whole community that we teach from the inside has made it very popular. We have a strong business case. I might talk a little later about it, showing that we contribute not just to engagement and well-being, but also to the financial bottom line. And the program is so successful that 2 years ago we started making this a consulting service, so that we are now also helping other big companies like Siemens or like Deutsche Post DHL, or as a big American company that doesn't want to be named, but that they like to be taught by the German engineers how to be mindful and how to... I'm amazed by this too, yes.
That is funny.
Yeah, and so in a nutshell, I mean, we all could talk very long about our stories. I'm so surprised how this all unfolded in a very pleasant way. And to tie the story back to the picture you showed and to the Parkland tragedy, I think I was at a point when I found mindfulness that I felt like maybe I'll leave corporate and I really go deep, and then I do change in the world, and then I learned we all need to stay where we are, where we have already a place where we have influence. And so I decided to stay, and because corporations, they're very influential in the world, so and it's easier to change a corporation than to change politics, I believe, and bring mindfulness in there. So that's our path, and I hope to make a very even more shiny example of how you can change a global company with these practices.
Beautiful. Thank you. And there's you, and you have a few team members who are doing this full time, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm having my role since 5 years, and I have now, I just got an extension approved, so I have now 5 full-time employees who are doing, that's quite amazing, isn't it? I mean, they're just focusing on mindfulness. So content development, program rollout, of course, part of it is the customer business, but then often I get the question if I do other things next to my role. No, I'm focusing just on this. So it's great that the company sees the value. I believe it's really supporting competitive advantage. It's not a question if you should do this. It's just a question that it's necessary. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Cheryl, so you've also had an amazing journey, and Etna is also one of the early adopters of mindfulness, one of the pioneers. Tell us a little bit about how that unfolded there and where we are today.
If you would have told me back in 1996, which is when I did my very first training in a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, John Kabat-Zinn was my first teacher. If you would have told me then that I would be in this role today, I could never have imagined it. I had never even worked in corporate America before. And as it would be, Mark Bertolini, who was our president at the time, asked that we do a study to demonstrate the efficacy of mindfulness with about 500 of our employees, and that was about 10 years ago. And I remember after watching Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes, maybe you remember that profound episode, and booting up my computer and emailing Mark Bertolini after the show saying, we need a chief mindfulness officer. And a couple months later, he had reached out to my team and asked us to develop a strategy. And the first item on the strategy was to hire a chief mindfulness officer. And so that's when Andy Lee came on board. And so we have a team of 3. So Peter, you've got us beat by 2. We have 3 full-time employees, people who are dedicated at Aetna, a CVS health company now. And our strategy really is to bring mindfulness to our employees and to our customers, and therefore the members that we serve, and to your point, Rich, to the communities that we're in as well. So in my role, I am responsible for first educating and building awareness about what mindfulness is and how to practice it in the workplace and why it matters. And because Andy and I are both trained as MBSR teachers, we roll up our sleeves every day and have the privilege, really, of designing and building programs and developing tools and resources. And also, we're involved very much with designing the communication, the messaging, and the marketing of mindfulness, because as you might imagine, how we talk about this in the workplace actually matters. It can be the difference between opening a door or closing a door. So those are some of the things that we're focused on right now, and a little bit about our journey.
Great, thank you. And to note that an organization like Aetna has, you said, 450,000 employees, right? So is that right? Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, we were at
Aetna
50,000,
CVS, yeah.
and now that we've been acquired by CVS, we are 450,000, and so eventually our companies will be fully integrated. And actually, I'm pretty excited about the opportunity for, if you picture, there are 1,100 CVS health hubs across the country. Imagine in those health hubs if we would be teaching mindfulness sessions. So
yeah.
I'm holding this vision and holding this intention in my heart that we will have the opportunity to bring mindfulness to our neighborhoods.
Beautiful, thank you. Beautiful vision. Here's the thing, we talked about this earlier, it has not always been rainbows and unicorns, right? It sounds awesome, like, wow, teams, getting it all that out there. It's been a journey. There's been ups and downs, as I know from talking to each of you, right? So, as you will, what are some of the struggles about having mindfulness in an organization, trying to advocate for this and integrate it into organizations? What were some of the things you've experienced?
I think because I'm the new girl on the block, it's still very much in formation in San Francisco. And so one of the things that you absolutely need is you need a leader who's a champion, somebody who has the power to say yes. And then next to that, the challenge then becomes, how do you build a team? So this is what we are doing now. We only have 2 teachers for a workforce of 9,000. And the 9,000 are required, mandated, to take a trauma training. And we're endeavoring to add the mindfulness to that. And we're a city and county, a municipality. So that means that figuring out how to redirect dollars to this is a big issue. And so for us, we are looking out at our corporate community for support in space, for support in dollars to train more teachers. So I think a mission needs to be funded. And for us, that is a big question on the table right now.
Fair enough.
How do you fund the mission?
Yes, fair enough.
Thank you. I want to build upon that. So yes, it needs, I think in the beginning, somebody, a champion, who really wants to bring this to the organization. And this takes a lot of persistence and perseverance and determination. It's not happening by itself. So I get often the comment when they hear my title, Director of Global Mindfulness at a global tech company, oh cool, I want to have your job. And then often I think, you're not really sure if you want to have the job, because it is not as easy as you might think. You have to fight for budget. You have to make sure to align political streams within the company and all of that. You have to be able to deal with setbacks. So I want to encourage all of you that might think, how can I bring this to my organization? Be determined, try it out, find followers. So start with demand, find like-minded people, check which doors are open, and learn how to really navigate the organization. So there's this great quote from Gandhi, it pretty much resonates to me. He says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So, and I saw this in many, many circles. Or another quote, just as a means to encourage the audience, and I have this actually from Rich years ago, it's like, rather ask for forgiveness than for permission. So go, try things out. Of course, don't do stupid things, but see really, that are forbidden, but see really how you can find your ways to get it in the organization.
Beautiful. Thank you. Cheryl?
So we're a very big company, and we have a very diverse employee population, and people do all kinds of jobs. We have people who work in customer service centers. We have clinicians who support members on the front line. We have people in IT and legal and compliance. We're like a microcosm of the world, if you will. So the biggest challenge was realizing that this cannot be cookie cutter. We have to find a variety of different ways to be able to introduce mindfulness. And of course, the world and our companies and our communities would all be a much better place if everybody was willing to actually meditate for 10 minutes a day. But in the workplace, we can't tell people that that's what mindfulness is and that you have to meditate to be practicing mindfulness, right? So we have looked at a variety of mindfulness meditations from 1 minute to 10 minutes. But then we're also looking at ways of bringing mindfulness into the moments, into the task. So simple things like if you could schedule all of your meetings in Outlook to all start 5 minutes past the hour. That's not a mindfulness practice, but it does give you that new workplace habit to create space in your day so that you can practice a higher level of self-care, that you can take a bio break when you need it, you can fill your water bottle, you can take a lap, you can eat a healthy snack. So this opportunity to kind of show people that there are many ways to bring mindfulness into the day and then do that face-to-face, on the phone, dialing in, virtual, WebEx, on self-service, on-demand offerings from our mindfulness intranet. So again, looking at a variety of ways and trusting that people will find a way to connect with this practice that in a manner that has integrity and that would actually be helpful for them.
Thank you. I have a tough question. So this could be for any one of you. Here's the tough question. I'm going to read it. I had asked you to think about it a little ahead of time. There's been criticism that bringing mindfulness into organizations tends to dilute, cheapen, and misuse it from its origins as a practice grounded in ethical and spiritual transformation. What would you say to that?
Can I? I think it is an important, so there's this criticism out right under the label Make Mindfulness, and I think it's important to see that what we teach in the organizations, that this is not being shallowed down to a mere concentration practice. I think then this criticism has its validity, so that mindfulness teaching has also involved teachings of compassion, of empathy, of kindness, and that the teacher we are educating, we're taking a great deal of care that they, or just to speak in general terms, that these teachers are coming from a heart place, so that it's not just a concentration practice. And then I think what I can see within our organization and others, that it actually helps the single individual and the organization to strengthen. And it's beneficial for both sides. And then actually I believe if you bring in mindfulness in this thoughtful and deep way in a probably dysfunctional organization, it will not serve the organization. So that would be my answer on that.
Thank you.
I think that we also have to expand our concept of mindfulness. I think that in some ways, some of the practices absolutely have been appropriated from other cultures. But it's not just learning to sit quietly and collect oneself and search inside yourself. Does not belong to any one group of people. It is part of the human experience. And if you go to Africa, you will find it. If you are in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where I spent a year, you will find the ladies rocking on the stoop on a Sunday afternoon, sitting quietly. The person that introduced me to mindfulness, Dr. Frank Staggers, right in Oakland, had an NIH grant, studied meditation all over the world, and came back and introduced what he called quiet sitting to Black people in West Oakland that made a difference in high blood pressure rates and diabetes and overall stress. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to everybody.
All right, beautiful. So our time is just about up. I would just ask perhaps a line, a sentence from each of you. If you could consider, there are many here in our audience and perhaps those listening online who are at a place in their journey where maybe they're wanting to bring mindfulness to their communities or organizations, where maybe they were someone like you a few years ago. So if you could think about the early version of you when you were starting on this journey of being a mindfulness officer in your organization, what advice would you give to that person in a sentence or so?
I would say trust your intention. If you don't know where it's going to take you, if it's in you, do it, and life will provide an opportunity, sometimes on a pop-up or out of nowhere, to be able to bring your gifts forward and to whatever it is that you're drawn to be trained to teach so that you bring forward whatever it is, however you're defining mindfulness, bring it forward with integrity and be able to develop a strategy that's clear and understandable to the people that you want to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo on that. Practice yourself and come from your love for the practice, that this is really your key driver. Be skillful in the way how you teach, and then be perseverant and patient and persistent and trust that actually miracles will unfold.
Yes. I would say absolutely what my colleagues have shared, living in the realm of the miraculous. And follow the next sparkling crumb. You will not necessarily know all the answers, but follow that inspiration and definitely build skill. And then you take one step, and the next sparkly crumb will appear, and you take the next. And the road and the path begins to light up. But the last thing I would want to say is be fierce and unafraid.
So our time is up, but I do want to share with you that there is a pop-up meeting space behind the hub. That's where the books are being sold, on the floor below ours. And we're going to be gathering there if you wanted to continue the conversation or ask questions of our guests. Thank you all, and thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.